What's going on, everybody? We got another OT with OT Small Talk. I got a guy here that's been in the program for a minute, but a guy that's grown up in front of our eyes. We got Caleb over here. I'm gonna let Caleb introduce himself a little bit more, talk about where he's from, obviously his path to UNCP, and getting ready to go on this last ride here. All right, Caleb.
Hi, my name's Caleb Grau. Like OT said, I'm from Belleville, Illinois. It's a semi-big town right next to St. Louis, Missouri. I've been wrestling my whole life pretty much. Ever since I was little. I took a few years off, but that's besides the point. I kind of fell in love with it around seventh, eighth grade. That's whenever I noticed like my big jump in wrestling. Like I was starting to compete with like ranked guys in the state and all that. And then freshman year, sophomore year, kind of got lost in the crowd of high school. Let my grades slip. Same year, same with junior senior year. I was locked in wrestling, but grades wise, I don't know. It wasn't my priority. I always put it in the back seat. Sports were always kind of emphasized first. My parents were always telling me, you got to have good grades, you got to do yada yada to get to college. But for me, that was just in one year right out the other. That's just something that I want to tell people, like grades really do matter. As OT could tell you, he pretty much got me into UNCP. I was a chancellor's exception. I owe OT like a lot. He changed my life. If I didn't come to UNCP, man, I'd probably just be in the army. I mean, in the union, looking forward to going to the bar on the weekend. I'd be like an average. Nothing wrong with being that guy, but it's just not what I wanted for my life.
Okay. Ah, man, that's a pretty heavy intro there. But yeah, so in the recruiting process, you were one of the guys that I was really intrigued about because you weren't just a wrestler. You were coming through. Your upbringing. You played football, and I'm sure you played a plethora of other sports that kind of got you to that point to where when you were an older wrestler, you weren't burnt out, so to speak. So what do you think about guys like yourself that are multi-sport athlete, and how do you think that contributed to your development as a just as where you are now?
I think So I played my first two sports were gymnastics and obviously wrestling. And I think gymnastics helped me like tremendously, like flexibility wise, hip mobility, neck mobility, all of that. And then of course I played football growing up too, and that just helped me, breaking down, getting into athletic position and driving through like a tackle. It's the same thing with taking a blast double, pretty much. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So obviously you came to UNCP. You were fourth place at the regional tournament. Your freshman year, true freshman year, that was when things were crazy. No fans could be in the stands for pretty much that whole year. That was a crazy year for you. And you kind of put yourself out there. You put your name on the D2 scene. You know, but going back to it, talk a little bit about that freshman year and how it was navigating it with a handful of your teammates, and now come back full circle where your senior year you walk out the door and there's 50 people there, and just talk about the difference between your first year and your last year as a college student, one, and just as an athlete.
Yeah. So my first year here, it was obviously COVID. The classrooms were just like small. They were all divided. Everybody had a mask on. Couldn't see their face. Could barely hear people talk. Nobody was really talking to each other. I feel like now, compared to my freshman year, 5 years later, 6 years later, everybody's starting to get back into the swing of things, like being social again. I mean, even with our team, like my freshman year, our team was kind of just like divided. We had our own little groups. It wasn't really like a whole team and family camaraderie. Like now, I mean, I'm sure you can speak for us, Cody. Like we got a tight team. Like everybody hangs out with each other. It's just different. Like we're all closer. I think COVID really kind of separated everybody. I mean, we kind of had to though. Yeah.
If we want to keep wrestling.
Yeah, if we want to keep wrestling, had to get one of those tests all the way up to our
Oh
brain.
man, yeah, they got the brain surgery every week, once a week. All
Every
right,
Monday.
all right, Caleb, it's time for brain surgery. Come in here. But that was a really unique time. Obviously, as you look around the region, even the country, you see a lot of new coaches. A lot of people didn't survive because a lot of people didn't want to, have their livelihood, be tested every week by whether they pass the test or not. But again, I guess giving you credit and giving you a lot of your teammates credit. You guys showed a lot of resolve. You guys were able to grind through that. Talk about how that's helped you develop into the man you've grown into be, and we'll get a little bit more into that later on. How did navigating a year where you saw barely anybody, and you had to still try to go after something that you weren't really sure if you would get at the end of the year.
It was just really staying motivated. Like, of course, COVID year sucked. I mean, we couldn't be as social as we wanted. We couldn't do certain things. Like, I think we wrestled 8 matches that year. Like of course, I wanted to wrestle more, but we were restricted to what we could do. I mean, it helped me. I think I had a lot of downtime, like when I was cutting weight by myself. Nobody's in the our UNCP gym. It was just the wrestlers in there, still, separated because we had to be however many feet apart. But I mean, it was just a lot of self reflection, just on the treadmill, suffering, but telling myself I'm gonna be okay. It's all gonna be worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. So now you're one of our senior leaders. You've kind of taken the reins. You do a lot of the team, I guess I'll call it team bonding, to kind of get the guys together. You talk a lot about your shortcomings as a college student, as an athlete, and I think it's been one of the great things watching your development as not just a wrestler but just as a man, and it's been pretty cool to kind of see that a young man that came here, not sure of himself, athletically, but more importantly, not sure of yourself academically, and now you're double major,
Yeah.
without a doubt, getting ready to graduate a degree. You're gonna pursue a career that's gonna, have you do well for yourself, and really, I tell people all the time, I get paid to do this. I get paid to, work out. Just finished an individual with you and Cody here. Talk about, how staying the course, and now you're a guy that can kind of like shed some light on some of these young guys, to make sure they don't get lost in the sauce, so to speak. How I guess for you, is it frustrating to kind of give your advice or give your 2 cents and guys not listen? One, and then two, how do you approach that?
I So me personally, if a senior came up to me whenever I was a sophomore, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, you were doing the same things whenever I was a kid. But I mean, seriously, like it, having fun and being social, it's always gonna be there. Like no matter what, it's always gonna be there at the end of the day. Like end of the season, people are still gonna be going out and having fun. Like it's all gonna be there at the end of the day. It just staying on track. Like really, just there's so many distractions out there that want to knock you off course. I don't know. I don't think it's worth it all in the end. It took me how many years to realize it? You know what I mean? Like it took me a while, but as soon as I mean, really, I thank my girlfriend Gabby. She's a lifesaver, honestly. She got me my head on straight. My biggest problem was just going out and the chase. I wanted to go see something new, and it's not worth it. Settling down and just being with that one person, it changes a lot. Changes a lot.
All right, so talk about your parents. Your mom, your dad. How they've helped you along this journey. Stayed with you. Most parents don't want their kid to go; they want their babies right there by them. And it's a credit to you and your upbringing and what your parents did for you to be able to say, okay, well, we know what Caleb needs, and we know for his betterment and for his future self, we need him to get away from here. And talk about how that's impacted you throughout your journey. Not being able to see him as much as or as often as you want to see him. Like probably you see some of your teammates, they get a chance, they jump in the car and they go home 2 hours. Talk about the positives and the negatives of that, if there is a negative, I guess.
I mean, I'll start with the negatives first. There's definitely some negatives. I don't get to see my family as much as I used to. I see them probably 3 times a year, 4 times a year, if that, if I'm lucky. I mean, the biggest thing for me is that sucked for me is going home because I got two little brothers. They're 9 and 10 now, or 10 and 11, something like that. One or the other. They're just growing up so fast.
He's sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but whenever I left for college, they were 2 and 3. So that was something that kind of ate at me my whole time here. It was just like I missed my brother's childhood. I go home every time. They like something new. They're playing a new game. They got a new hobby that they like. So that was kind of hard for me to swallow. And also just like I'll never forget my freshman year. I didn't really care if my dad, left because I know he was going to call me. He's just that type of guy. He's going to call me every weekend, every week to see what I'm doing. My mom, she was more passive, kind of let me do my own thing. So that was tough. Like whenever she dropped me off for college, I'll just never forget. Like that was I think the first time I cried my freshman year. It was sad because I wasn't be able to see my mom as much. I'm a mama's boy for sure. There's a lot of difficult, but there's a lot of positives. Like OT said, I've grown up so much because I'm out here by myself. Of course, I got my wrestling family, but I still have to grow up on myself. I had to learn to cook. I had to do my own laundry. Just house chores. All that I'm doing. I had to do for myself for a while until I got my girlfriend Gabby.
That's two shout out, Gab. Okay, girl.
Yeah. Seriously though, I think moving away was the best thing for me. If I would have went to college near my home, I don't think I would be nearly as successful.
Okay. So now we're gonna get to the wrestling piece. Man, you're sharp, man. You're looking good. You're healthy. Obviously you've been to the show, so you know what that's about. And you were hungry to get back there last year. We had some setback. We're not even gonna get into that. But you're ready to roll.
Yeah.
And again, we're not gonna put too much information out there. We just finished a little individual. Wink, wink. What should we expect from a grown, mature guy that's got his house in order this season?
Relentless, just relentless. I'm not gonna be afraid to pull the trigger because years past, like that's my game, being offensive, pushing the pace. And I feel like years prior I didn't do as good of a job, but it's my last ride, so I got to let it all go. I can't hold nothing back.
Okay. Well, you guys have it there. Like I said, we're not gonna go too much into the details of what we got cooking, but that's my man Caleb. Senior leader, national qualifier, a dog, ready for his last ride. Caleb, you got anything else for the people? Your social? I know you got to give a shout out. If you're not gonna give yours, we're gonna at least put Gabby's on there, right?
We can put Gabby's on there. It's Gabby, Gabby, Holtrop, HOLTROP.
All right. There you guys have it. All right, that's another OT small talk. Really a long talk because he's a senior. He got a lot to talk about. So we'll see you guys on the next episode. Let's go.